Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Today's webinar is brought to you by EdWeb and ParentPowered, the creator of an accessible, evidence based family engagement curriculum for birth through eighth grade that supports, inspires, and activates parents and caregivers with simple, strength based insights they can turn into everyday teachable moments. All right, I think we've gone through all of our housekeeping. So let's switch gears and start thinking about family engagement by taking a quick poll. All right, so what would you most like to achieve this school year when it comes to family engagement? And just put your answers in, and we'll give folks a second or two to do that and see where we end up. All right, we've got lots of answers coming in. But it looks like we've got about 61%, so more than half of you that are interested in learning all of the things on the screen. And just about 15% are interested in getting to know more families so I can better understand students and their unique needs. So we are going to address all of these things in the upcoming webinar. So let me introduce our speaker. We've got lots to cover, and so I'd like to invite April Hawkins and Missy Martin to join me on screen. Welcome to you both. Missy is joining us from South Carolina, where she is Title I Family Engagement Specialist for Lexington County School District 1. And April Hawkins is currently Marketing Manager with ParentPowered, but brings with her many years as an educator and including Director of Communications serving on the Superintendent's Executive Cabinet. So again, lots to cover, and we'll go ahead and hand it off to Missy to get us started.
Thanks, Emily. I am so excited to be here with all of you today. I am Missy Martin, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Lexington School District 1 in sunny South Carolina. I began my career with the district in 2001 as a parent educator, providing home visitation and personalized visits for children and families. And in 2015, I took on the role where I am now, where I support best practices around family engagement in Title I schools. I also provide support to the district's 4-year-old kindergarten program. And here with me today is April Hawkins from ParentPowered.
Thanks, Missy, and hi, everyone. I developed my passion for family engagement working in school district communications and accountability. I manage stakeholder engagement efforts for a $52 million grant from the state of California. This was in a district where 70% of students were facing poverty. Fellow Californians will recognize the grant as the LCFF and the stakeholder engagement process as the LCAP. Simply put, I was responsible for making complex state regulations accessible to families and advocacy groups in multiple languages. I had to make it understandable regardless of the parent's educational level. Most importantly, we had to get parent approval on the plan in order to receive state funding.
So we're about to enter the land of school family engagement. And to help us center ourselves in this work, we thought we'd spend a quick minute just connecting with our own experiences as parents and caregivers. So we're going to ask you to share your responses in the chat. Think of the last time you drove up to your child's school or any school. What did it feel like going into the building? Was there a welcome message? Did the front office staff welcome you and smile? What pictures and displays did you see? So think of a time when your child's, again, you can draw on your experiences or think about, your child's school or the school where you work.
So we've got some folks saying that they felt very welcomed. We've got others saying since COVID, it has been less welcoming, but that things are becoming more friendly. They saw board members' pictures. Pre and post COVID, a big difference. Very happy and welcoming. A welcome sign at the front. Great that families are being allowed back in the building. So I'd say overall, people are feeling welcomed. Some with signs, some with greetings. Staff always smiling.
So think of a last time when your child's school did a great job of communicating with you by email or text. How did that feel, and what did they do that made you feel good? And this
We've
can be
got
any kind of message.
we've got some emails that are welcoming and down to earth. That's a good description, down to earth. Unfortunately, if someone gets too many emails, so they don't usually read them, and I think that's something we're going to be addressing. Using Dojo, so feeling like they're always in the loop and seeing pictures of events. Shared information about what's happening in the community as well as the class. Outreach by email and phone calls. Another mention about perhaps over communicating. Someone enjoying getting paper flyers. So lots of options there. A postcard doing a shout out. That's nice. Who doesn't love to get mail? Yeah. So lots of emails, social media, some phone calls, some print pieces.
All right, so let's walk through those doors to school. April and I are going to share what we know about connecting with families. We're going to offer strategies to provide families with information in a way that doesn't scare or overwhelm them, or feel like they're getting too many communications that they can't even address them. And we'll also offer ways to empower families and leverage their strengths.
I came to work at ParentPowered because I wanted to increase my direct impact on student outcomes. The program is delivered by text and it suggests activities that parents can do. They receive the activities a couple of times a week, 3 times a week to be exact, and the activities take a few minutes. But the really outstanding thing is that extensive research at Stanford University shows that the program actually increases student learning by 2 to 3 months over 1 year, which is just an outstanding result when parents are spending maybe 20 minutes a week doing the activities. It's also an equity driver because parents can support children no matter what their own educational level is. The growth that was shown in the research shows the value of family engagement, but the fact that 90% of families use the program every week shows something else that we all know is true. Parents want to see their children succeed, and parents are the best partners for student success. But sometimes it's really hard to reach all families. And sometimes the students who need the most support come from the families that are the hardest to reach. I know how hard it is to work in schools. Everyone's doing the best we can with limited time and resources. And sometimes in this rush, we aren't able to support families the way we would like to. And this can cause closed doors for the most vulnerable families. I experienced a closed door myself. In 2017, my wife and I were foster parents to a first grader. She had a pre-K reading level and she couldn't recognize any sight words. She needed additional support. I called to set up a meeting with the teacher. I emailed her. I didn't get a response. So I called the principal and emailed, and I didn't get a response. So I went to the school and the principal wasn't there and the teacher wasn't available. And the attendance clerk who was at the front desk wasn't helpful either. She wasn't able to tell me when to come back, how to reach the teacher, how to connect with the principal, or any steps I could take to get support. So I decided to reframe my request and use my privilege. I pulled out my district administrator card and I said, do I need to go to the area executive director to get the support our foster kid needs? And guess what? They called the principal right away, set up an IEP the next week, and tutoring started a few weeks later. Her reading skills improved. I knew the buttons to push, but most parents don't know which buttons to push. I only knew because I worked there. Just think of all of those moments in which I could have been turned away. I could have stopped when I couldn't reach the teacher. I definitely could have stopped when the principal wasn't available, but I had a roadmap and I knew the chain of command. I had a job that gave me the flexibility to leave work and come to the school, but not all families can do that.
April, you're exactly right. And we actually had a family show up to a school needing tech support. And in a similar way, they were told, we don't have anyone here to help you with that today. The family was turned away with, not there were no next steps or who they could contact for support. we don't have anyone to help you today. And the family ended up coming to the district office to get help. They just weren't able to get it at their child's school. Another time, a family showed up at a school and was turned away without support because of a language barrier. And later, after following up with the parent, the family liaison found out they actually had no transportation and had walked to the school with two young children, and she herself was expecting. So it serves as an example that when families are there, we really need to make an effort, regardless of barriers or convenience. They are our customers, and it's our responsibility to serve their needs. And we tell these stories not to criticize, but to use them as opportunities for growth and positive change. We can turn our missed opportunities into learning lessons. And partnering with families matters. If the stories aren't convincing enough, the research is pretty compelling. Family engagement has a direct impact on student outcomes like chronic absenteeism and discipline referrals and just overall learning. And this is regardless of socioeconomic status. So you can see that family engagement is a key ingredient to student success. And family engagement builds a partnership between families and schools to make learning engaging and to ensure that children are seen and represented in the classroom. Parents are their child's first teachers. ParentPowered empowers parents to engage with their child through everyday learning opportunities. It literally gives families the tools and language to make the most of those moments, such as going to the grocery store or talking about how we use math in our daily lives or how to stay engaged with your middle schooler. We know that stronger connections between home and school equal better outcomes for students. And when we value families as partners, they feel more confident to support the educational needs of their children, which increases the school's ability to achieve equitable outcomes. When we take it a step further and have pictures of students' families, their home language displayed, and visual representations of who they are, we create a culture of belonging for all.
We're going to share some proven strategies to engage families. Missy hinted at some of them just now. These strategies will help reach all families, including those who are really hard to reach. I'll start by sharing some insights about written communication. I've seen all sides of family engagement as a foster parent, an administrator, as a mom, and communication can be really complex. So we'll lay out some simple strategies to make it easier for you and for your families. Working in schools and districts can be really complex. I didn't always nail it the first time in my parent communications. Take this message. California was in the middle of some of the worst wildfires in a decade. We were looking to the County Office of Education for guidance. I ran from an emergency executive cabinet meeting to shoot this text out to parents ASAP. I sent out the first draft to 13,000 parents. The DOE extended the stay-at-home order. We're awaiting confirmation from COE and will update you ASAP about which LEAs will be open. As you can imagine, I received a lot of emails and phone calls from confused families. I had to quickly send out a revised message, and it reminded me that a few extra minutes can make all the difference, that even in an urgent situation, the first draft probably isn't the best. In my next draft, I made it more personal. I cut down the extra info, and I asked myself, what do families really need to know? They needed to know if their kids would be in school the next day and how soon they would find this out. This experience leads to the first strategy I want to share. Make it manageable. A caregiver should be able to understand your message quickly without having more questions than answers. So how do we make information manageable? Here at ParentPowered, we like to map it into a what, a why, and a how. Here's an example from our work. So let's say we want caregivers to help children build towards this Common Core state standard. The first thing we do is look for a what. What do we want parents to do or know to help their kids develop this skill? There's a lot they could do, but what really leverages their unique relationship with their child. Parents are with kids during everyday tasks. They're together for transitions like waking up and everyday routines like housework. So, an easy thing we can ask them to do in order to build the skills above is to describe the things they're doing. So, that's our what. So, we've got our what. Now we need to let parents know why. Why is this important? Why should it rise to the top of their priority list? Why should they describe what they're doing? And there are often a lot of whys. I'd encourage you to quickly jot them all down. In this example, here are all the skills children can build from this exercise. Now we're going to choose the whys that we think will be most important to caregivers, reading and communicating. Then we turn the what and the why into a singular statement. Fact: describing the things you do builds language skills. These skills make it easier for kids to share their thoughts. Their reading skills get stronger too. Now we've told a caregiver the thing we're hoping they'll do and why it's important, and we've chosen a what and a why that are a good match for their unique relationship with their child. Now they need a how, and we're going to look for a how that's mapped right onto their daily routine. The reason for this is that parents are much more likely to do a new activity or behavior if it's directly linked to something they are already doing. For example, if I'm already doing laundry, it's easier to count each sock than it is for me to go collect a bunch of pebbles to do a counting activity with my kid. When we map the how onto a pre-existing moment, we make the activity doable and familiar. This is empowering because parents read it and think, oh, I can do that. So in this case, the how might be, describe what you're doing as you wash the dishes. I'm pouring the blue soap onto the sponge. Look, it's making a foam. Or describe what you're doing as you put on your socks or zip your coat. Our team at ParentPowered turns this right into a tip message. Tip: describe your actions during daily activities. As you do the dishes, talk about it. Try, I'm pouring in the blue soap. Make sure to use lots of details. Now you can totally stop at a what, a why, and a how, but in our work, we offer one more activity that gives encouragement and offers a way to take the skill a little further. For example, here, our next message would have the child describing what they are doing. Growth: keep describing. Now it's your child's turn. As they play a game, ask, what are you doing? Ask for details. So in summary, when you're communicating an educational concept that you want families to build at home, give a what, a why, and a how. You can also take it a step further to offer tips on how they can build on this learning. The next strategy I learned is to make the content relatable. A few ways to do that include identify and reflect the various communities in your school. Reach families in their home languages by offering translations, and explore any assumptions you may have about families. First, let's talk about how to reflect and include your community. It makes a huge difference when people can see themselves. It makes the content you're sharing more interesting to them, and research shows that representation improves student outcomes. You can do this by using photos and images that reflect your school community. For example, I worked in a district where most of our kids were Latino, and we had a huge Filipino population. So I made sure when messages went out with photos of families, that many of the families in the photos were Latino or Filipino. If you're not sure about the various populations in your school or district, that's okay. You can find the data online, or you can reach out to me and I can help you find it. Emily will share my contact information at the end of the presentation, and I'm really happy to help. Translating content is really important too. It sends a message that you value home language and culture. It goes a long way to make families feel included. And most importantly, it makes the information available to families who don't read or speak English. It's also important to culturally version your translations. This means making sure your content is translated in a way that makes sense to the reader. You can do this by having a native speaker review the content. I know this can be a really hard ask for school districts. Resources and time are short, and professional translations can be costly. So sometimes you could ask a native speaker to review the text before it goes out to families. You could ask a parent volunteer who speaks Spanish. For example, if you're sending information out in Spanish, or you can connect with your bilingual specialist in your district. If you look for it, there are usually resources out there that you can get access to. The next point is really important and can be the hardest. Everyone has their own set of implicit biases and assumptions, and we can gently challenge our own assumptions. For example, not everyone celebrates Christmas, and not every family has food on the table. So it's important to consider religious differences, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and other issues that may impact your families. You never know who carries belief systems that are different than yours or who is facing challenges at home. An example you're probably pretty familiar with, a lot of school districts have transitioned from calling the school break in December Christmas break to calling it winter break so that all kids feel included, whether their families celebrate Christmas or not. At ParentPowered, we support our partners in sharing community resources like food banks with their families. You can see that in this example from Kamehameha schools in Hawaii. You won't be able to read the text here, but the message offers families a community resource for finding food. Families can click on the link in the message to locate their closest food bank. Sending a message like this to all families normalizes the need for food, and it makes it easy for families to find what they need. So in summary, when you're communicating with families, make sure the images in your messages reflect the diversity of your community. Highlight people from various backgrounds, offer quality translations, challenge your assumptions about families. You never know who needs extra support. And you'll notice I've shared some personal stories with you today. Part of the reason for that is to make myself relatable to you. I want you to know that I've worked in schools like you do. And I share this because that's a great method you can use with families. It builds connection and builds comfort. You want families reaching out to you and sharing their culture and the big things that impact their lives. It will inform the way you support them and their students. Now I'm going to hand the mic over to Missy to share some tips on wording.
Thanks, April. So the next strategy or rule to hold in mind is words matter. So wording is a critical key to access and equity. It's often the difference between a message or a correspondence that feels overwhelming and distancing and ones that feel inclusive and empowering. In the education world, we talk about using $10 words, but those words aren't worth anything if people don't understand them. If the words trigger parents' own negative experiences about their own education or feelings of insecurity, they're hugely detrimental to your mission of supporting and engaging them. With the first sentence of a when the first sentence of a communication has a word or concept that you're not familiar with or it doesn't make sense, it distances you from everything that follows. And you begin to think, this isn't for me, or I don't know enough to do this. So look for the simplest, warmest way to communicate the learning goal. And this can be hard because standards are full of academic jargon and insider language and acronyms. So here's an example. Let's say you're needing to message families around this standard. Count up to 10 objects using one-to-one correspondence, one object for each number word with increasing accuracy. If I were explaining this standard and why it's important to a family, I might say instead, when children count objects one by one, they learn we count to find how many. You can see how removing the jargon and those $10 words helps to simplify the learning goal. Here's another standard teachers might be working on: the ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. That's quite a mouthful, right? So here's how I might orient families around supporting that standard, or this standard. Talking about things your child does well helps them learn about their own strengths. This builds their confidence and independence. So remember, if we want families to support the learning goal, we need to simplify it in a way that's more easily understood.
The next strategy is to level the text. The average reading level in the USA is 7th to 8th grade, and that's under good circumstances. We are all stressed and multitasking, and I'd urge you to level your sentences with that in mind. Short, easy to read sentences are really going to help you reach parents. Here are some things you can do at a glance. Shorten your sentences, use common words and phrases, don't use $10 words, and cut out extra words. Here are a couple of examples that put these strategies to work. This is the first sentence of a district communication recently received by my friend. As we enter week 3 of the new school year, we continue to expand on the services we are providing to students and families. It sounds good, and it gives encouraging information, but this is written at a 10th grade reading level. Here's that info broken into 2 sentences with simplified words. This comes in at a 2nd grade reading level. Let's do one more example. This is the next sentence in that correspondence. Our partnerships are increasing, and we have done a lot of work to set up extracurricular activities that will offer students engaging, empowering, and challenging opportunities. And after I've broken it down into 3 sentences instead of 1 and simplified the language, we have new partners. We've also set up new after-school activities. Students will be engaged, empowered, and challenged by these new activities. By splitting the sentences, we bring it to a 4th grade reading level. The last strategy I'd just like to mention before handing the mic over to Missy is to hold your reader in your mind and your heart when you write. I imagine you're already doing this. You know your family's best. You know what they're going through right now, and I'd urge you to picture individual families as you create messages. You might even have a set of questions that you'll ask yourself before you press send. Would my families want to read this on their worst day, their best? Would Randy want to read this on his worst day? How will this make my families feel? How will this make Elton feel? Could my families read this while also doing laundry or while feeling overwhelmed? This is the step that will really reach families and make them feel held and supported by you so that they are better able to hold and support their children. Now I'm going to hand things over to Missy to talk to you about what you can learn from families.
So, over the past 20 years of working with families, one thing has remained true. I've learned a lot from listening to them. When we take the time to listen to families, we're better able to understand their needs, what resources and supports to connect them with, and help to ensure they have a voice. I can remember a time early in my career of doing home visitations when I thought I understood the needs of a family I was working pretty closely with. I connected the parent with all the right resources, or so I thought. It wasn't until I realized the parent had not followed up on those resources that I decided to dig a little deeper and was wondering what happened. Why weren't those connections made? And it would have been easy to just assume that they were apathetic or lazy, but working with this family so closely, I knew that wasn't the case. By shifting my practice of really listening, I learned there were barriers I wasn't even aware of. I learned that trust begins with listening, and with trust, we can build relationships that lead to positive outcomes. Families will tell you how they really feel, what they know, and what they need when we choose to listen. Sometimes we think we know what families need, but they will tell you if you provide the opportunity. And by listening to families, we also learn how to make school more inclusive. By embracing diversity in the classroom, we create richer learning environments that promote creativity, innovation, and increases overall student engagement. In our district, we have a shared vision of family engagement that we adopted from our work with Dr. Stephen Constantino. And it goes like this. It's very simple. Engage every family, every child, every teacher, every day. And our district's motto is all means all. It's a simple yet powerful reminder that all families have value, knowledge, strengths, and unique needs. And we're living in a very diverse world. So when we embrace our differences and invite families to share their stories, it creates an environment that welcomes all. Simply having the word welcome in all languages that are represented in your school, at the main entrance or on the front doors, is a great place to start. One of our schools has a courtyard where flags are displayed that represent a student or a student's family who were born in a different country. And you can see that picture displayed here. These are just a couple of examples that are easy to implement with great impact. They are visual messages to students and families that say, you are welcome here and you belong here. We also know that students' basic needs impact their learning. Here's some research to consider. And these are definitely challenges that many of our students and families experience on a daily basis. So we want to make it possible for families to access those resources. One way that ParentPowered helps us with this is through their community support stream. And in a previous slide, April showed a visual of that. It was called Connect. And families receive that weekly Connect text with information and links to local resources, everything from food pantries to medical and mental health services. And our families have reported that they appreciate the quick access that connects them directly to that resource when they need it. Through through the ParentPowered dashboard, we're even able to customize some messages that families receive, so it makes it a one-stop shop, so to speak, so that that information is received through a consistent platform. And as someone mentioned earlier in the chat, that it's they're not getting different messages from all these different places where they have to go and find these resources. They also provide us with a monthly impact report that allows us to track that data, including the number of connections that are made in that month. In fact, in our year-end impact report, 83% of parents said the community support stream, or those connect text messages, help them feel that support is available. And additionally, 83% of parents also reported the community support stream helped them feel connected to the community. And this was really important information for us because this was a time when we were, right in the middle of the pandemic, pretty much. And we're working hard to find ways to connect families with resources that they needed, and these are just right at their fingertips. Some other key factors to family engagement are to give families a voice, to intentionally build relationships, and to value families as partners. By building a relationship, you're able to know before things become a crisis. This allows us to respond, provide supports, and circumvent situations that may fracture or negatively impact the ability to even build a relationship. Parents are the experts on their own children. By elevating and valuing their voice and seeing families as partners, we learn from each other about how to best support children's individual needs. And this leads to my favorite point. Make sure to get feedback from parents about your family engagement efforts. In Lexington One, we do this by providing intentional opportunities to gather feedback and input. These might be through surveys, during group one-on-one activities, simply written on index cards, or even having a comment box, which may seem a little old school, but when families are there and we provide the opportunity for them to give their feedback right then and there, it's really powerful. Family liaisons also make personal phone calls to families, and then, of course, through social media. We are always striving for continuous improvement and to make experiences meaningful and relevant for families. We can't do this without their input. Anytime we make decisions or changes, we make sure to gather and consider a family voice to help inform those decisions. We also make sure to share updates with families regarding that feedback so they know their voices were heard and are valued. So remember to ask and invite, but also be willing to act and improve. So, in closing, we really appreciate you being here with us today. We hope these strategies that we shared are helpful to you and you're walking away with ideas you can implement right away. We'd love to know what you think and what you're most excited to try. So, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Emily.
Well, thank you, Missy, and thank you, April. This has been so great, and we appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts in the chat and providing some other information in addition to what Missy and April have shared. So, as Missy said, we'd love to know what you are most excited about trying. So, we'll just do another quick poll and see of all of these great strategies we've learned today, what you think is going to be most useful. Just give you a few more seconds to share your thoughts. I'll kind of tip our hand and say that it's looking like most everybody's excited to try everything. But we'll see where we end up. All right. Yes, it looks like 69% of people who voted are excited to try the what, why, and how using clear and concise language and leveling text. And those are all wonderful strategies. So, not surprising that everybody wants to put all of them into practice. So, thanks everybody for sharing that. So, in addition to everything that Missy and April just shared with you, we've put all of those tips into this handy tip sheet as well as some additional strategies for you. So, you've got that to refer to as you're sitting down to craft those communications, whether they're emails or a card or social media posts or posts to your website, so that you can really think through how to connect with families and give them that information in a way that will really connect with them and support them. So we're putting the URL to download that tip sheet in chat right now. And we also will be sending it out by email in the next couple days. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Before we get to questions, and we do have a lot of great questions that have come in, I just want to quickly thank ParentPowered for sponsoring today's webinar. You saw a lot of screenshots from ParentPowered's evidence-based family engagement curriculum during the webinar. This program requires educators to do absolutely nothing. Once students are enrolled, or once parents are enrolled, families are enrolled, educators don't need to do anything else. And each week, Parent Powered is going to provide support to families that's going to empower them to engage in their children's learning in a way that can lead to as much as 2 to 3 months of additional growth over the course of a school year. So that's pretty incredible. The program's available for birth through 8th grade, and you can learn more at readyfork.com/schools. And we're putting that URL into chat right now. So I encourage you to go out and look at some of the examples of what Parent Powered sends out each week to families. And it's multiple times a week. And there's lots of research and case studies that back up how this really can support your district and your school in building those connections and partnerships with families. All right, let's go ahead and take some questions. Missy and April, what do you recommend, or who do you recommend that teachers turn to when they're trying to partner with families who really may not be their students' best partners?
So I would say I wasn't sure if Missy was going to jump in first.
Yes, I
Um,
know.
so I would encourage teachers to try to find out what else might be happening with those parents. It's possible that mom or dad or whoever the caregiver is in that situation could be facing housing instability. There could be illness happening, um, multiple jobs. And the ways that you can go and try to find that out is if you have a social worker in your school or a counselor that you can connect with and ask if they've had any interaction with the family, if they know that there's a reason why the family isn't being supportive. You could also connect with your admins if you have a good relationship with them and find out if they know of anything that's happening with that family.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think those underlying causes are usually at the root of it. Sorry, Missy, go ahead.
oh no, I'm sorry. I would agree with that. I think sometimes if we think about that iceberg, this is what we see, this is what we know, and it's what's underneath that oftentimes we don't know. And I think always assuming good intentions. The research tells us that there is a very, very small, and I mean less than 1% of families that are apathetic or don't care. It's more often, than not that they just don't know, how to support their student. Or as April mentioned, there are so many other things that they're prioritizing. And so again, I think it goes back to listening to families, providing opportunities for family voice to share their story, and then, as April said, connecting with those professionals in your building that can come alongside and support you.
And I think, as April said at the very beginning of this, just keeping in mind how busy everybody is. Think how busy you are and how many demands there are on your time, and that everything feels like a priority. So, again, keeping that kind of open heart and grace with the families that we're trying to connect with, I think is so important. In a somewhat similar vein, if families aren't engaging and they're not responding to surveys or to your emails, how can we ask them what's going on, if the things that we're trying aren't getting a response?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that sometimes, again, I go back to, our ask. Are we asking how families, best receive information or communication from us? I think trying different ways to engage families through, we send out a lot of communication to families. Asking a question to encourage engagement at home. I mentioned Dr. Constantino's work earlier. He has a term called invisible engagement. And it's up to us as professionals, teachers and school staff, to provide opportunities to build engagement at home. Sometimes we don't see that engagement, but we set up those opportunities for that to happen. Um, so really just kind of being intentional and, again, going back to, finding out, sometimes making a phone call and, sharing something really special about that child, and building a bridge to ask about, how things are going, or just a way to build a relationship. If families know that you care, that you care about their child, you had their best interest, and you can build that relationship and that trust, that's a game changer for engaging families.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. April, did you have anything you wanted to tack on to that?
No, those are such great suggestions that I would just be echoing what Missy said. So
All right, no worries. We've got many more questions. So I'm going to kind of bundle two questions together. So we've got, what are some ways to encourage parents to attend parent or family engagement nights, along with, in your experiences, are there incentives that entice families to participate in some of these events?
yes, definitely. So when I was doing the LCAP stakeholder engagement process, we had to get families from representative of every community. So families who were serving foster youth, families who were experiencing homelessness, um, people from each of our linguistic groups within the district. And people had various issues with transportation, working hours. So, one thing that you can do is try to stagger your meeting times. So, for example, if you have a very important event, if you're going to have the meeting at night, have another option in the morning if it's a very important event. Also, try to have a digital option if you can. Um, Things that make it a lot easier is to make sure that you're using a location that's close to a bus line. If you're doing a district-wide meeting, um, make sure that there's childcare, food, and that there are lots of opportunities to interact. And
Yeah, those
Missy
are
actually
all
had
things.
some great ideas about open houses that I know that we chatted about that I'm hoping she'll share.
Yeah, so I would also echo all of the things that April said, and connecting, again, having those opportunities. in multiple ways that families can get that same information. So if it's a way that you can record a session where families could, then watch that later. If it's, maybe early morning where families are dropping off or might have time to come in before school. Um, evening times for families that work. Sometimes you can collaborate among schools and do a Saturday, like a larger event where you involve your community, get your community on board and bring in some of those resources that we're always trying to connect families with. Um, and also, I think about asking families what interests them, because I go back to, some of the things that I've learned from listening to families and just doing this work for so long that, we often think we know what families need. But it's not until we really, you know, listen or ask and invite that we might can sometimes tweak our practices for how we provide opportunities for them and what opportunities we're providing for them.
Yeah, all goes back to that listening piece of things, and you know, thinking about those other perspectives. Not just what we feel is helpful and useful. We have somebody in chat who just shared what a great success they had both with their parents' night and a grandparents' night or day, which I think is great. And they did emphasize that they had food, music, and raffles. Food is always a draw. So, and April mentioned that. But the food, the childcare, making it accessible. And Missy, I love the idea of that early morning when people are already, there at the school potentially dropping their kids off. So those are all
Sometimes,
great suggestions.
yeah, sometimes we forget those moments too. We want to, you know, um, make the most of um, time that families do have. None of us have any extra time these days
Right.
to give, and so trying to make it you know easy for families to participate. Also thinking about ways that you can, families that speak different languages in your building, having family representatives there that may have a little badge or button that says I speak Spanish, or
Mm.
just ways that when families walk in, it's like, oh yes, I need someone to kind of come alongside me and lean on your your families. Again, they have strengths and knowledge to bring to the table too, so invite them to come and be parent leaders, family leaders, to come in and help you with these type of events, to help families feel more welcome, and it's a little more just to remove some of those barriers that may be there.
Yeah, that partnership piece of, it's not just the educators up here and the families down here. You're together in this partnership. So yeah, leaning on their strengths is a great idea. All right. So a couple questions from some looks like school or district leaders. So how can we encourage our teachers to reach out to families or caregivers, on a daily or weekly basis to build the solid partnerships with families so that they're just not always reaching out with a problem? I think that that's a common occurrence where that outreach is just about a situation.
I've seen this done really well in some of the schools that were part of the districts that I worked for, and they had a growth mindset. And so, from the principal level, from the district level, um, first we need to meet teachers where they're at and think about what the blocker might be. Do they know what the impact is of positive family engagement? Do they know how much it's going to help their students? Because the teachers are extremely busy. They're always having to navigate different uh, directives, I guess, from the district office and from the school site. So you can make it a directive, but I would also really try to get buy-in and try to get feedback from them about why it isn't happening or what resources they need to be able to make that happen, and show them how to do it easily. For example, in our school district, we set up s'more, which I'm not pitching s'more, but it was just this very, very easy to use. You drop in something and you can send photos of kids, doing their best work. There are just so many different ways that you could make it easy for your families. Or sorry, for your teachers to reach out to families.
Yeah, and I like what you said, April, too, about making it easy and giving an example of what that could look like for them, because oftentimes, as you said, they're doing so many other things, and they're not really sure how they should say this or how to go about connecting with a family about this. And it's always important to start with a positive. And so for school and district leaders to share that message so early on, before a problem comes about, that we've already shared a positive message with every family, so that every student's family has received something about their strengths. And we should always see them through a strengths-based lens, students and families. And so I think when you make family engagement a priority and build in time to really intentionally talk about strategies that you can use, and again, to April's point, make it simple, make it an easy lift, not one more thing, but something that is really interwoven into all of the things that they're already doing. So it might just be tweaking your communication with your newsletter. Some of the tips that April gave. When you're sharing about specific content or standards, using some of those tips that she shared, that makes it a little more easy for families to connect with the learning. That again helps teachers to know, though, to have those strategies and those tools and resources in their back pocket, so that they practice those, and then before you know it, at the end of the year, they're doing all of those things already.
Yeah, that formula that April shared is so helpful. And I think, again, if teachers are newer to this or not sure how to proceed, just having that, okay, these three steps or these three, four things I need to think about when communicating, I think is so helpful. And like you said, Missy, then it just becomes a habit and ingrained in what teachers are doing. So great suggestions. We've had a couple questions. We hope this school year we're, moving out of the virtual environment, but we've still got some virtual or online situations. So any tips for engaging with families in a, virtual or cyber environment? Or do you feel like most of everything what we've talked about is really applicable, whether we're face to face or virtual?
When I was most of the tips that I covered are really about digital communication and about virtual communication. I feel like any of those are applicable to a digital environment. I think digital family engagement can be a little bit more difficult. We definitely saw that during COVID and trying to get families to show up for parent teacher conferences and everything. But once people got the hang of it, it seemed to be actually easier because things can happen more on family schedules and they don't have to go out of their way to arrive to an event. So, um, yeah, I think that you could draw on some of the tips that we shared earlier.
Yeah, I agree. And also trying to find a way to connect with them, if they're not coming into our building or dropping off a child, or we're just kind of in that virtual world. Trying to make your communications as personal as possible. Making that taking that extra step and making a personal phone call. Those kinds of things again can go a long way, because it does feel a little more distancing when you're um, in the virtual world. So
Yeah. Yeah, which we've all been in a lot, and there's some great benefits about it. Like you mentioned earlier, it just opens up some opportunities for some of those pre-recorded uh, greetings that people can watch on their own time or participate in meetings without maybe having to get on a bus and come across town to the school. So there's the pros and cons of that virtual world. We're getting close to time, but I'm going to sneak in just one last question because it came up right when we started in the chat when people were talking about whether their school was welcoming and how communications were. And we've gotten some questions. So, what's a good rule of thumb about the amount and frequency of communication we should be doing with families so that we don't overwhelm them?
So I think it's really important to, first of all, consider the time of day that you're sending messages to families because as their school district or their school, when you send a message, they're right away going to wonder if something is wrong with their child. So try to send it in the evening if you can. And unless it's something very pressing, like, hey, the school is burning, come and get your kids. Um, So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I would not communicate more than 3 times a week with families unless it's something that is very urgent. And that's a pattern that we have extensively researched at ParentPowered and with the Ready for K program. And it's definitely the sweet spot for families.
I think those are great tips, and also to think about, a consistent platform as well. That families are not, having again to source different platforms or ways to connect, or so much information coming at them, they're not really sure what to prioritize or how to prioritize it. So if you can streamline that to one platform, or um, simplified in the best way, is also helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that consistency I think is great, both in the frequency as well as where I'm going to look for information, and yeah, so there's no surprises and making it easy. So, well, we have come to the end of our hour together. It went so very quickly, but thank you again, April and Missy, for being here. It's really been fabulous. So much useful and valuable information. And those of you who joined us, thanks so much for your participation, for your great ideas and great questions. If you are interested in learning more about Parent Powered's Family Engagement Program, please do reach out. There's a link there on the screen as well as an email address. So we'd love to hear from you and happy to answer any other questions that you may have. So, again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening, and we really appreciate your time and wish you the best of luck as you continue to build those relationships and great partnerships with the families in your school.